seems to be generally acknowledged that most projects require considerable variances in the SNAP ordinance.
You say areas that were downzoned?
Well, effectively, the SNAP ordinance downzoned or created envelope and other design restrictions which effectively downzone transit-oriented areas.
Yeah, the East Hollywood area, east of the 101 on Hollywood, around the metro stations, has a specific plan that was adopted in 2001 that was part of the subway extension, which I think opened a few years before that. It's actually probably not a technical downzone, but I know what you're talking about, the height limits. There were some floor area ratios that were raised. Actually, a number of those areas allow 3-to-1 floor area ratios, which is fairly urban for our city, and it's a pretty quick instance to get there. It's a project permit with planners. However, there are a number of other requirements in that plan that we hear about a lot in terms of some massing and orientation, some other kind of more progressive ideas at the time were incorporated. So we did take a look at that. Ultimately, it was decided that we would not be able to concurrently reopen a specific plan of that size at the time of the plan. So we would welcome to have more comments on that, something that's on our long list of things to do. But obviously that would be a very involved community outreach process, because there's a very dynamic set of community members in that area. But we'd love to hear your experiences. But that's not being changed as part of this plan.
Yeah, well, my understanding with the SNAP is that the floor area ratio, there's 3 different districts in the SNAP. There's one that's predominantly residential, and there's 2 that are commercial. And the FAR in one of the commercial areas is 2-to-1, which is higher than it would be in the rest of the city. And then in the other commercial district in the SNAP, it's an FAR 3-to-1, which is also higher than the rest of the city. So I don't know. I don't think that the downzoning that you're speaking of has to do with FAR. I think it probably has to do. There are transitional height requirements in the SNAP, which means that if you're close to residential so many feet, you're only allowed to go up a certain number of feet. So in that way, and that's to protect the neighborhoods. Because of the increase in the FAR in the commercial areas, there's concern that the residential areas would be overcome. And so that height requirement was put in there to protect the residential areas. But technically, that's not a downzone. I mean, it may have that effect in that it makes the development there a little bit more difficult. But on paper, it's the other way. It's not down.
Second question is, you try to reconcile inconsistencies and set a clear path that allows for the development they're seeking to desire. How have you come up with a way that we have a problem in Hollywood where there's considerable litigiousness on discretionary planning commission and city council action? Have you been able to identify areas where you can eliminate unnecessary discretionary actions related to projects that you otherwise would want to see occur?
That's the kind of question.
That's actually a really good point, and people have different thoughts on whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'll talk about it from the perspective of something going through our system. We do have discretion, which is not that we have it, but it's a process. It means it's a type of process where the city makes a decision, yes or no. Those are always subject to potential litigation, and maybe most importantly, they're also subject to our environmental quality laws, which is another area that people do pay a lot of attention to in litigation. One of the things the plan is doing, and I've gotten a couple meetings about this, we are bringing our plan more in line with the character of development that's happening in Central Hollywood, whether it's our plan designations of regional center around our new stations, accommodating more realistic floor area ratios in urban centers, preserving the hills, preserving a lot of our residential areas as we talked about. In those areas, developers, if this plan moves forward, would no longer need to come in and request those particular entitlements from the city. So those entitlements would no longer be discretionary, they would be in place up front. That's something that the cities, we've tried to say, we're going to have this discussion up front with the community. We're actually going to go out and create the zones in advance to try to build that predictability for the development community of where development's encouraged and where it's not encouraged. What we're not addressing, which is something I've heard a lot about, we are not addressing CEQA or the environmental laws of the state, and we're also not addressing our other code issues, such as if you build 50 or more units, you go through our site plan review procedure. There's still other processes out there, and certainly in terms of development reform, we're trying to create a consistent development package. We have some work to do on that, but this particular piece of that angle should help in that regard. It's not going to, it doesn't solve the entire city's development process quite yet. I mean,